Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I have the honor to speak with Professor Ronald Placone. We're going to talk about elections, like 2024 presidential elections. Professor, you mentioned like you have been working other like campaigns, political campaigns, kind of dealing with communications. How
Yeah.
do you view about the 2024 communication, like in both candidates? I think like let's start with President Biden before he dropped out. How do you judge his communication performance?
Okay, Bruce. Yeah, this is a interesting topic. I've been studying campaigns my whole life. I mean, I go
Hmm.
back to the 1964 presidential election when I was just a little wee guy, but I was so captured by, in many ways, the negative campaigning
Hmm.
that made me afraid of Barry Goldwater. I wouldn't go to sleep until my mother reassured me that Lyndon Johnson won that election in
Hmm.
1964. So
You're very engaged. Yeah.
I've been very engaged my entire life.
Hmm.
This one was a bit different. So if we start with Biden, it's, certainly he had that early exit from the campaign.
Hmm.
And, I think they were pushing to do an early debate. And
Hmm.
that obviously was a mistake. He wasn't physically able to give off the kind of cues that
Hmm.
we expect in our leaders. He made us concerned about his well being and certainly had us question whether or not he was prepared to govern for another 4 years. If you recall, that debate was really the defining moment of his
Yeah.
campaign when it became obvious to any I mean I looked at my wife during the campaign and I said I had no idea he was in this kind of condition and there's no way he wins this election.
Do you think his team lied to him? Like they made him kind of feeling that he is capable of doing this kind of debate because his performance is disastrous. Like I
It
look at
was
it, I couldn't stay for
it's
yeah.
the only way to describe it, and you never know. I mean, certainly at almost any level of politics, there's a degree of deference to the leader that can be so staggering that anything is possible. And
Hmm.
it is quite possible that his advisors, and maybe it was for their own self-interest, were saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're fine. Everything's going to work out. Not to worry. You're great." And they're creating this reality that is
Hmm.
so removed from the reality that other people see. It's disturbing, and in this case, was extremely costly. So I,
Exactly.
for Biden, part of it is you have to display a certain gravitas, a certain authority, a
Hmm.
control that make others want to follow you, believe in your convictions, believe that you are the person that could handle most anything
Yeah.
coming in your direction. And just the opposite uh, came across in that debate performance. And if you recall, this is a time when Trump he saw what was going on in that moment,
Yeah.
and he was smart enough to not say a whole lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure what's going through his mind is, oh my God, this is a disaster for Biden. I don't have to say anything. And
Yeah.
that's how it played out. So I think it took a lot of us by surprise.
Hmm.
And I think that then you had everyone calling for him to step aside. And, you can't help but wonder what had happened, what would have happened had he stepped aside earlier and the
Yeah.
Democrats would have moved on with the primary process that would have been an open primary process where a candidate could have emerged through that and there would have been some consensus around that candidate. And you wonder if the election would have been quite different.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think his major issue is his communication to the public is really
Yeah.
always mixed message.
Yeah.
Initially, he said, "Oh, I'm not seeking for re-election. I'm just a bridge between the current
Right.
administration to the future of the
Yes.
Democratic Party, right?" And
Yes.
later, he decided, "Oh, I'm going to run
Yes.
for re-election." So that confused a lot of people. Apparently, his mental state
Yeah.
deteriorated so much that he could not even complete a comprehensive debate with the opponent. And Trump, to Trump's credit, Trump really kind of see that moment. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything. I just like let him kind of show how
Yeah.
terrible, what a disaster it is. Yeah.
Sometimes being silent is the best thing you can do. And one of the sadder parts is I do think Biden had some very good things to run on. I
Hmm.
don't think he ever quite got his due with the way we had come out of the pandemic and how we
Yeah.
compared to other industrialized nations.
Yes.
Yes, inflation was higher than we want, but there needed to be context for that. We
Exactly.
emerged from a pandemic. How do we compare to other industrialized nations as they emerged from the pandemic? There was a story that could have been told that never got out. And part of it was there's a concept in communication theory called the first
Mhm.
brain test.
Yeah.
Things have to get past the first part of the brain before we start to process. Well, when we see someone that we don't think is capable for leadership, nothing else really matters.
Yeah.
The logic of what an administration has done, and look at the infrastructure bill and some of the other signature legislation, it didn't matter. So the
Mm.
story never got told.
Yeah. Biden still think he could beat Trump if he didn't get pushed out.
Yeah, I
Do you
know.
think that?
Obviously, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yes, who knows? I find it unlikely just because of what happened and what might have happened subsequently. We'll never know. I mean, we'll never know how that campaign would have played out at the time. Just trying
Mhm.
to be as objective as possible and say, "Gee, are the Democrats doing the right thing?" For me, I thought moving on from Biden was the right decision.
Mhm.
Could there have been another way to do it? Could they have had one open prom? I mean, I don't know. It's all hindsight now. But and they were painted into a pretty tough situation
Mhm.
because you're starting now in the summer for a campaign for the fall. And, usually these campaigns start a year or two in advance, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. Then we can move into the next candidate, Kamala Harris. What do you think about her performance?
Well, I think that, there were bright spots. I think she's a very smart individual, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes her background as a prosecutor and that could serve her well.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly in the one debate, I believe it did. But to me, there were some fundamental issues that I really question uh, the campaign strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with, Biden was not getting glowing scores in the public polling. So
Approval is terrible. Yeah.
approval's terrible. So you have to separate yourself. There's a way to do that rhetorically where you can, give that person to do and talk about the successes and the challenges, but let people know what you have to offer. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that she was asked point blank, what would you do differently? And
Mm-hmm.
she said, I can't think of anything right now. I mean, to me, that is I always teach students, anticipate questions, the most likely question and the question you don't want to be asked, and make sure you have an answer prepared. So I would think that she should have been prepared for that question. How do you differentiate yourself from Joe Biden? What would you do differently? What will you be doing? She should had stock responses to that she would have hammered home, and
Mm-hmm.
she didn't. That to me
Yeah.
was so fundamental. And then another big one, if we just sort of leave the border and the immigration issue to
Mm-hmm.
the side, because that was clearly not handled well. But I thought that it was atrocious how they handled how she handled transgender rights,
Mhm.
and supposedly they had a response to the media blitz that the Trump campaign,
Yeah, I know that they were doing this attacks on her, right?
and they
Yeah.
didn't do it. So they
Yeah.
just left it unchecked. So that you had a narrative being created that males were taking over female sports and
Yeah.
everything was about transgender rights. And yes, is it an issue? Of course it is. But from a percentage standpoint, what percentage of the population that are we talking about? How many people are affected, to what degree? There was never a robust rebuttal
Yeah.
to what the Republicans were saying. So it went unchecked. That narrative became the reality, and it was another reason for people not to vote for Harris. So
Yeah.
I think, in terms of differentiating herself from Biden, in terms of having a clear rhetorical communication strategy that was responding to transgender rights, they fell flat. And
Yeah.
then admitting to, yeah, there's some problems at the border. And we have some really good plans as to what we can do about it.
Mm.
Now, you can argue we should have done some of this sooner, and perhaps we should have. This is what we did do, and this is what's been accomplished over the last 6 months, 9 years, and this is how we will continue the progress we've started to make. Again, not a clear communication strategy, a narrative that Trump really built the majority of his campaign around, the immigration issue and in the change in the country because of the number of illegal immigrants coming in. And
Yeah.
most of his argument was certainly not supported by facts.
Yeah.
Most of it was exaggeration and relying on data that crossed many presidencies, including
Yeah.
his own, not just the Biden administration, but it went pretty much unchecked. So
Yeah.
I think when you look at the big picture, and I know even to this day, there's a lot of finger pointing taking place in the Democratic Party as to
Mhm.
what happened and why. But I do think from a communication standpoint, we can identify at least three issues where their communication was extremely lacking, and Trump was able to take advantage of it in his campaign.
Yeah, I vividly remember the question Harris got asked, what would you do differently from
Yeah,
Biden? But
yeah,
she said that word. I think that's a defining moment.
yeah,
And I wonder, like, I know at her standpoint, she has a pressure from Biden's side, like you should not criticize your former boss, right?
yeah,
Like your current, still be your current boss, and
yeah,
also like you should not try to kind of, distance yourself too much from Biden
right.
because you
Oh,
are
yeah,
in the administration. It's a difficult
exactly.
standpoint. So how would you kind of think about like alternative, maybe a slightly better way for her to handle that
Well,
question?
I think your point is excellent, and that is the rhetorical challenge. You were part of the administration. Now,
Hmm.
in reality, we all know that vice presidents are not very powerful.
Exactly.
In fact, in many ways, the Trump campaign tried to make Harris as the final decision maker on the border and on a number
Yeah.
of issues. And we know that wasn't the case. It's
Yeah.
never that way. Look at how Vance is being used or not used now.
Yeah.
That's the way vice president, it's the role of the second banana. They're not used very heavily. So I think
Yeah.
there are ways to say, look, I'm very proud of what we accomplished as administration. List
Mhm.
those accomplishments. Keep hammering out at it. In some way, we don't recognize enough how difficult it was to come out of the pandemic
Hmm.
as we did, we should be very proud of what we've done as a country. Now,
Hmm.
are we doing everything perfectly? Absolutely not. These
Hmm.
are the areas that I know we can do better. And when I am in charge, differentiate. When I am in charge, when I am the president, this is what will be a hallmark of my
Mm.
administration. This is how we will move forward. So you're being respectful of the past. You're giving credit to your boss and the administration that you were part of, but you're also signaling that you're ready for the time when you will be the top dog, when
Mm.
you are the one calling the shots, and they're very clear areas that we need to do better at as an administration, as a country. And you list them. And you stay true to these themes. You keep it simple. I mean, I think everybody has joked a lot about the word salads we get from
Yeah.
Harris and from Trump. Just keep it simple. I mean,
Yeah.
harping on the same themes, and sooner or later, it starts to register. People get it.
I have to say, your response is so much better than what Harris said in that show. It's just like if she gave that kind of speech, I would
Yeah.
say, good job. At least, like, I'm convinced that you will be a great president
Yeah.
for the next term.
That's what puzzles me because some of what I'm saying, to me, this is common sense. Any communication professional that was advising her should have hit exactly at the themes that I'm saying. So, one, either it wasn't done, or two, she didn't listen or was incapable of executing. I think she's a smart person. I think she was capable of executing. So I don't know where this fell flat, but it
I,
fell flat.
I, I just feel like she didn't anticipate that question, which is like hard to
Oh,
imagine. But that's from
it,
her reaction. It looks
yeah,
to me she didn't prepare this beforehand. The
yes,
second thing is my issue with her is she's not a very good speaker. Like if she didn't prepare
yeah,
beforehand. She's just like, if I think JD Vance, if you ask him that question on the spot, he would give the answer you just gave 100%. I'm pretty confident he can do that, even without preparation. But
yeah,
for Harris, I just don't think she's a strong candidate to be frank. From the beginning, I mean, I watched her debate
yeah.
in 2020 primary
Oh, wow.
and
That,
she's pretty bad. I mean, she didn't get any dedicated, and she just like dropped out. I think she dropped out the first, like in the
right.
race.
Oh, she
Yeah,
was very, very early. And you're
yeah,
right. And there were many people, I think, who did not support her because she wasn't, quote, a legitimate candidate.
exactly. I agree.
It's like, okay, Biden has anointed her, and we're going to get behind her, some felt, as a way of stopping the Trump machine. But others felt, you know what? I don't feel comfortable supporting her. I don't think she's a strong enough candidate. And we did not have an opportunity to select a candidate. Again,
Exactly.
it goes back to how I think Biden's situation was handled
Yeah,
by the advisors and the Democratic establishment. It was costly. I mean,
yeah.
myself, I don't think Trump would have been elected had the Democrats, had Biden moved aside early and there was a primary process where Democrats could have evaluated their
Mhm.
candidate and a candidate emerged through that process that people could legitimately get behind. I think it would have been a very different general election than this one.
I agree. So I think the only high point for Harris is like the debate. I think
Yeah,
she did well in the debate. She over
yeah,
prepared apparently, and she definitely have a better performance than Trump. But
yeah,
that's it. I think that's a high point. And after
yeah.
that, like her,
I mean, he can talk about how great he did and how he killed her, but he had to know
no,
it didn't go that well. And I don't think I want to debate this person again. He
yeah,
had to know that.
yeah. Now let's move on to Trump. Like, what do you
Yeah.
think he did well, and what do you think he could improve, like on that campaign?
Well, for me, Trump's skill. I mean, I've studied emotional intelligence for 25 years.
Mhm.
And for me, when I think of Trump, emotional intelligence is one of the first things to come to mind because he's kind of split. 'Cause emotional intelligence deals with perception and expression. Where
Mhm.
Trump is very skilled is understanding and perceiving the emotions of others. What
Yes.
kind of triggers the emotions of others? Why might a certain demographic be angry? Why
Mhm.
might a certain demographic be scared? Why might a certain demographic feel like they're being left out and they don't recognize the United States as their country anymore?
Mhm.
I think he's very skilled at seeing those things, understanding those emotions, and devising communications that appeal to those emotions.
Mhm.
And a lot of it is based on fear. And he learned early on that fear wins and fear can sell. That to me is where he is most skilled.
Yeah.
When he has pressed, and some will argue that the way the campaign, this is where I think the campaign may have been different had the Democrats had a candidate that was vetted through a primary system.
Mhm.
And I think you could have had more discussion around issues, more discussion around statistics. But Trump was able to play very loose with facts
Mhm.
and wasn't legitimately challenged on it. I don't think the Democrats ever got past almost that first brain test where they
Yeah.
were able to have an analysis of what exactly is he saying. I can remember back in the day, in presidential campaigns when the candidates would purchase. Now, back then, there were pretty much three networks:
Yeah.
CBS, ABC, and NBC. And each candidate would purchase like a half-hour block across all three networks.
Mhm.
And they would just talk directly to the American people, saying, look, let me tell you how it is. This is what we have done so far. Let's look
Mhm.
at some of the numbers. Are you satisfied with that? Maybe to some degree. I think for most of us, we know we can do better.
Yeah.
How are we going to do it? So you just talk directly to the people. Now we
Yes.
don't see any of that anymore.
No.
What we see is a lot of negative campaigns, and whoever seems to have the upper hand in terms of what theme is sort of resonating with the majority of people seems to come out on top.
Yeah.
So Trump, when pressed on issues, I mean, I think for a lot of people, they might say, well, I'm still waiting for the specifics of that health care plan that was about to be unveiled. And I'm sure it's going to be unveiled one of these days. So when he's pressed on specifics, he generally will dance around that
He has no
because
plan. He
he
has no
has
plan.
no plan
Yeah.
and he's just been able to maneuver. And a lot of it's just, how he was trained. He was essentially trained by two people. Well, you could, if you want to throw in Kellyanne Conway, you would say Roy Cohen
Uh-huh.
as a young person, Roy Cohen, the lawyer who trained Joseph McCarthy,
Yeah.
get on the offensive, deny, 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 attack, 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 sue, sue, sue,
Yeah.
uh, never claim, accept responsibility. Steve Bannon flood the media with various things so they can never hone in on one thing.
Yeah.
Just keep flooding it, flooding it, flooding it. And Conway with her alternate facts, and so these Trump was trained by three folks
Yeah.
who were very good at, I think, manipulating the media.
Hmm.
And I think we live at a time where many of us are easily manipulated. We believe what we see online constantly. We don't take time to do our own due diligence and try to parse out, well, what's reality versus what's a narrative. And as a result, politicians seem to get away with saying almost anything now.
All kinds of crazy things. So there's one thing I remember vividly when he was debating. He's like, "Oh, the hate is that they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats."
Oh,
I was
exactly.
like, that
Right.
clip looks nuts to me. I was like, "This
Yeah.
is this guy crazy?" But it seems to be working with his base. That's the
Yeah.
fascinating part because, like, from the people who are not his like hardcore base MAGA supporters we think he's crazy to saying those things which are completely
Yeah.
untrue and like no there's no facts supporting that but he
Right.
keeps telling that and then that got reinforced and his
Yeah.
base and some people who are less informed they're going to like wow those Haitians are crazy they're
Yeah.
eating cats and dogs we have
Yeah.
to kind of really vote for Trump to remove those illegal immigrants.
Exactly. He created a narrative that was far removed from reality, but enough people bought it. And I think we knew the way the country has evolved over the last decade, it's
Hmm.
pretty much split.
Yeah.
And you're appealing to a very small number of voters that are in the middle that you need to sway to your side. And Trump got them this time. Trump got them in 2024. Biden got them in 2020. So
Hmm.
that group is the one determining. I don't think, I mean, this is really the first time we're seeing some cracks in mega.
Yeah.
We're seeing some cracks in mega over the Epstein files, but we hadn't seen any cracks in mega. I mean, Trump was right when he said, I could, what did he say? I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and
They
get away.
still vote for him. Yeah, they can
Yes,
still
they
vote for him.
go for me. And
Yeah,
I think he's probably right. A lot of folks just, believe in him and the narrative that he weaves. And so you all along you're trying to appeal to that independent voter, the voter that is not firmly attached to one side. And certainly Harris didn't keep her coalition together.
no.
She lost Hispanic votes. There were a number of key constituencies that moved to Trump. Younger people. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
younger vote was really surprising.
I think those kind of Trump went on a couple like really popular podcasts. Like he went
Yeah,
on Joe
Joe
Rogan.
Rogan. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he went on a couple other like
Oh,
really popular ones. So I think like Harris just didn't go to those shows. I don't know
that's a
why.
great point, Bruce. That
Yeah.
when you look at how social media was, and Harris stuck pretty much to the tried and true, be on network talk shows, interview shows. The 60 Minutes, The View, and meanwhile, it was Trump who was willing to delve into the Joe Rogans of the world, and
Yeah.
that made a difference. So the world has changed and keeps changing, and we all need to change with it if we want to reach certain audiences. And
Yeah.
Trump did that much more effectively than Harris.
Even though he lied to all those podcast bros, like those podcast bros turn around how to say turn on him nowadays because like
Yeah.
his big beautiful bill didn't like
Oh,
realize
yeah, yeah.
anything. They were hopeful, but at least that strategy works. I just don't understand why Kamala Harris would resist going on Joe Rogan's show. I think they kind of negotiate back and forth, and in the end, she just didn't go.
Do it. Yeah. I mean, I think we can look back and there's several head scratchers when you
Hmm.
say, what were they thinking? What made them decide not to do certain things, not to run with certain media campaigns, not to have set responses for certain questions? It was again, and she had so much money.
Yeah,
She
she has
had
way more
so
money than
much
Trump.
money.
Yeah,
How was it spent? Who
yeah.
who is calling the shots here? And yeah, I think we're just starting to learn a little bit more about some of the infighting, and I think there's going to still be a lot written over the next couple of years about that campaign and how it turned out like it did.
Yeah, read a recent book called Fight. It came out and described like some backstories like
Yeah,
behind the Kamala Harris campaign. She inherited all the campaign crew from Biden,
right.
and because of like Nancy Pelosi and Obama pushed Biden out, Biden is furious
Yeah,
with about those guys, and then I think Biden somehow intentionally sabotaged the campaign for some. You remember, there's one moment Biden put on a MAGA hat on
yeah.
him, like. I know he tried to show like yeah we should kind of unite, we should not like be so partisan, but that's not a good communication, or that's not a good news for the campaign, especially when both sides are still running for the presidency and you have the former president wear a MAGA hat kind of pretending supporting the other side.
Well, and then I think the Harris campaign was unsure how to use Biden at times, how
Yeah.
closely to align. Should they have him appear physically with her often?
Yeah.
You know what? Those were tough calls. And again, I think some of it goes back to what kind of shape was he in, and would he be coherent in the messaging? So we just all things about it.
I know.
It was a disastrous situation to find yourself in. I just don't think it should have ever come to that. I think more things should have been done early to prevent the mess that was that campaign.
Yeah, and also like if you look at back the decision to pick Kamala Harris as a vice president as a running mate in
Yeah.
2020, do you think that's a good decision?
Well, looking back on it, probably not. I mean, again, I myself, this now the potential running of the vice president, yes, that gives somebody a pretty high place in the pecking
Yeah,
order to take the next step. But generally speaking, people don't vote for a vice president. Now,
exactly.
we could have a lot of debate. What would Shapiro have done on that ticket? Would
Mhm.
would uh, Harris had would he have won Pennsylvania with Shapiro? Would it could it have influenced Michigan, Wisconsin? We don't know. But
Maybe he
generally
could have
speaking,
a different strategy. I mean, Shapiro may
yeah.
be a stronger voice in the
Well, I
campaign.
think I think he would have been stronger in the vice presidential debate. I but generally speaking, I think the VP position is an overrated position. People
Yeah.
just don't vote for vice presidents. So I don't know if picking Harris initially was much of a problem for him. I think the way she became the candidate to run for president became a problem,
Yeah,
where
I
a
know.
lot of people felt like there needed to be a process that was a more inclusive process.
Yeah, if you look at back in 2020, Biden was trying to show that he is progressive.
Oh
He picked
yeah,
a female vice president. He
yeah,
initially just announced, "I'm going to pick a female as my
right. He
running mate,"
said that very clearly.
which
Absolutely right.
limit his options. And then I don't think he think that long term. He think about 4 years later, what if like my health condition is not that great, that the vice president may become the president for running for a few months and then running for the next like presidential election. What if that happens? Like, are you picking the strongest candidate that
Yeah,
can defeat
that's
Trump? I just don't think he think about that. Yeah.
yeah. For me, as a communicator, I try not to put myself in a corner. And
Mhm.
if I were in Biden's shoes, I would have never said immediately limit and say, I will pick a female as my
Yeah.
I would never do that. I would never recommend that. I would say, I am going to look at everybody. I'm going to find the most prepared person to be vice president. It will be a very lengthy process, a thorough process. I
Mhm.
may end up with a female. I may end up with a male. I may end up with a Caucasian, an African American, a Hispanic. All I can say is I'm going through the process to find the best possible person.
Yeah.
Leave yourself open. Don't just hone in on. I don't think he had to do that. I think he put himself in a box there.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting theory, like why Biden beat Trump in 2020 is because of at that time, like the COVID is pretty severe
Yeah,
and everybody is hiding at home, quarantining, and Biden is like staying in his basement, like
yeah,
never came out and give any speech. But
yeah.
Trump couldn't do any rally, which is like he's really good at.
His
That kind
lifeblood.
of yeah, that's just create this distortion of the
Yeah,
power during that time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, the it wasn't Trump's fault that we had a pandemic, but certainly we tend to hold people accountable for different aspects of it. And his administration did deserve credit for the vaccine, and then he tried to back off the vaccine, and it's kind of
Yeah.
strange because that to me was one of the highlights of his first administration, essentially in record time, having a vaccine developed that proved to be it's saved millions of lives.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's actually like if you say his first term and a like really good project he accomplished, that's definitely top of them. But
I
I think
think
for him, the problem is how to communicate that with his mega base because
yes,
among those are like
yes,
conspiracy theorists. Like they think the
yeah,
vaccine, you have the microchips in it. They try to control people's
right.
brain. You know, Bill Gates is behind it. So it's very difficult to communicate that to his face.
It,
So
it is. Yeah,
yeah.
that is a rhetorical dilemma. Yes.
Yeah, it is. So I think this is a really fun exercise, and we kind of, review the 2024 election. I think this is a really good exercise, and I think Professor, you provide a lot of good examples of how to frame a certain situation, like frame your answer to give the best genuine expression to the audience without like really hurting the relationship you have with other key stakeholder. I think that's like difficult to attend, but your answer to that Harris question definitely shows that that's possible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very nice talking to you on this. And I think next podcast we're going to talk about Trump's current challenges in communication, particularly this summer. I think there's a lot of interesting
Oh
goes
yeah,
on. The
the
Epstein
summer of cat.
files. Yeah, the Epstein file, the Federal Reserve, like lower the
Yes.
interest rate, that crazy show with Jay Powell, and
Yeah.
also his relationship with Elon Musk. I think that will
Yeah.
be the
Oh
topic for
yeah.
our next podcast.
Sounds terrific. I look forward to it. Thank you,
Yeah,
Bruce.
thank you. Bye bye.